talking about how to start an LLC in Nebraska, and what you can see behind me here is a checklist that we're going to be going through, and this is the actual checklist for starting your LLC. But before we get to that, I want to talk about common mistakes that people make setting up their LLC that leads to the LLC dumpster fire. And I call it that because it's something where these mistakes that you make, they can lead to tens of thousands of dollars in legal damages because you didn't understand terms such as piercing the corporate veil, commingling funds, registered agents, and pass-through taxation. And then perhaps after LLC formation, you ignored the LLC renewal process and you didn't look into the proper business licenses and permits. If you're not familiar with all these things, you will be by the end of this video series. And it is a series, and I highly suggest you watch the first 3 videos of it at least, because what it's going to do is it's going to properly educate you, and it's also going to make sure that you don't overspend when you're setting up your LLC. To do this properly, what we're going to do first is we're actually going to zoom out a little bit. We're going to look at what an LLC actually does for your business. So why don't we drop this down right here? And what we're going to be talking about is the fact that the LLC provides limited liability protection and also pass-through taxation. To best explain this, why don't we go with the example of owning a coffee shop without an LLC. So in this example, you have a business owner here in the center, right? On the left-hand side, you have their personal home, car, and bank account. And on the right-hand side, you have their business bank account, the point of sale, the physical location, the espresso machine, the lights. All of these assets are directly tied back to the business owner, which creates a lot of liability. Now, the example of owning an LLC that owns a coffee shop looks very different. Now what you have is the business owner here on the left-hand side with their personal assets, and the right-hand side, we're calling it the Acme Coffee LLC. All those assets are now tied to the LLC. This red line in the middle is something called the corporate veil, and it's very important. Now, you probably recall at the beginning, we talked about something called piercing the corporate veil, and we're going to explain that through the example of commingling funds. Now, as we scroll back down here, commingling funds is pretty simple. A lot of times people set up their new business and they don't get a business bank account set up right away. So they operate the business through their personal bank account in the beginning. That is called commingling funds. Now, let's say that somebody were to get hurt in your coffee shop. They hire an attorney and that attorney is going to sue you. What they're going to do is they're going to try to find cracks in your LLC, things that you didn't do properly. If they find out that you've been commingling funds and they provide that evidence to a judge, the judge may grant them permission to pierce the corporate veil. What that is this line in the middle dissolves, and then they can come after your business assets and your personal assets. We're talking about your personal bank account, car, and home. That's why it's so important to not only set up an LLC, but to do it correctly. So the takeaway here, first of all, is to set up that business bank account as soon as possible after you get your LLC set up. Now, as we go down here, what I want to talk about is an explanation of pass-through taxation. The IRS is not taxing your LLC. So let's say that the LLC grosses $140,000. You have $90,000 of expenses leading to $50,000 of net income. That net income is passing through to the business owner's personal tax return. Another way of saying this is flow-through taxation. You may hear it called that. They are used interchangeably. But I just wanted to make you aware that the IRS is going to be taxing you on the personal tax return. Now, this is helpful because it's actually a lot easier to manage this way as opposed to having to file separate K-1s, they're called, for your business. But a thing that you want to be aware of is in the future, you can apply an S-Corp designation to your LLC to reduce your tax burden. Now, what that is basically once you start making around $40,000 to $50,000 in net income, you can actually have the flexibility to change your LLC tax designation to an S-Corp. And that is something we're going to be talking about in the 3rd video in this series. So this is a series, and the purpose for that is I want to help educate you on everything you need to know about forming your LLC. I want to make sure that you're not overspending, but also what are the ways that you can optimize that LLC in the future. So this is probably more than you thought you're going to get as you opened up this video, but it's so important because it's one of those things where you can spend a half hour of time and feel prepared, not only for today, but 2-3 years out, and to know things that frankly I didn't know when I was getting started myself. So here's the checklist to start your LLC. First thing on here is to get this checklist for yourself. So I mentioned that there's bonuses and glossaries on here. The glossary is helpful. One thing in particular I'm going to highlight here is there's this video down here about LLC scams. It's really quick. It's like 4 minutes. Very helpful because a lot of times there's these scams after you set up your LLC, and I don't want you to overpay by like it's close to about $200, these scams. Another thing too is we have an AI chatbot under the bonuses here. So you can do stuff like one click, how do I register an EIN? And this is going to give you the information on that. We're actually going to talk about that in this video. But you can also do how to set up LLC in Nebraska. And what this will do is this is going to give us a detailed step-by-step list in your state. The other cool thing is this is actually a chatbot. So you can use AI, and if you're struggling with the name of your LLC or what to name it, you can use this for brainstorming. Also, what we have on here is a free charity opportunity. When you get your LLC set up, you can donate $20 to charity. Yearly accounting calendar. We're going to be talking about that in a future video. Free CPA advice and future tax savings. All of this we're going to be talking about in this video series. So there will be a QR code on the screen right now that you can scan, and there's also a link in the description below to get this for yourself. Highly advise you get this. It is free. Now what you want to do is decide on which route you want to go. You want to go through the state site, online LLC services, or a business attorney. Business attorney is going to be by far the most expensive. You're looking $1,000, $2,000. Better if you have a more complex situation. The online LLC services now, the majority of them offer a $0 plus state fee package. So they actually are very affordable, but there are a lot of upsells with those services. That's what we're going to be talking about in the next video. And for the sake of this video, we're going to go through the state site and we're going to be looking at the articles of organization that you're going to file and breaking it down, just kind of the more complex parts of it, things that people get tripped up on. So now you need to decide on a business name for your LLC. Well, the LLC name doesn't need to be perfect. The reason for that is earlier we had Acme Coffee LLC, terrible name for a business, for a coffee shop. But underneath that, you can have what's called a fictitious name, or also referred to as a DBA, a doing business as. What that will allow you to do is you can have a name like Espresso Yourself Cafe that lives underneath that LLC. What is important for your LLC name is it needs to be a unique name within the state of Nebraska. The way that you find that is there's a kind of hard to see blue link here, but you open that up. You go into this list here, and we're going to look for Nebraska. And now what we have is a name search right here. So what I'm going to do is do name starts with, and if I did Cornhuskers, as you would imagine, when I search I'm Not a Robot and perform this search, we're going to see a few different names pop up for the name Cornhuskers. Cornhuskers Who Care. That is an LLC that's already taken. But if I were to just kind of jam out on the keyboard and then click this here and perform the search, now what we're going to see is the fact that there are no results found here. It says your result, or this is returned 0 results. This is what you're looking for. This tells us that this is a unique name that is not taken within the state of Nebraska. Now, once you have that, we can get to setting up and forming your LLC. Now, this first one here is registering your LLC name. I put this on here because this is like a little half step that you can do, and this is kind of like buying the domain name but not setting up the website. When you register an LLC name, you're just securing that name. You're not actually forming the LLC. So I wanted to make you aware of that because, again, it's something that trips people up. They're like, oh, I got an LLC set up. You don't until you file the articles of organization. So that's what we're going to be talking about here. We have another state directory list here. And these bullet points will kind of cover what's on the articles of organization. But I wanted to actually go in and look at specifically Nebraska and then just kind of cover a few items here. So we zoom in, and what we have here is the articles of organization. You're going to put your name, street and mailing address, right there. Name of the initial agent for service of process. So sometimes this is referred to, typically it's referred to as the registered agent. In Nebraska, they call it the initial agent for service of process. Well, the service of process, what that is if you're sued, you're going to get a service of process notice. That is what's going to say that you need to show up to court. The registered agent is a third party that handles important communication and documentation for your business. So you're going to get that service of process notice. Make sure that you have that and make sure that you're showing up to court with all the proper documents that you need. What you need to know here is that you have to have a registered agent on file and they have to have a physical mailing address within the state of Nebraska. Now, they don't really let you know any other information on here. They just ask you who it is. When you go through online LLC services, they partner with professional registered agent services. And the nice thing about that is one in particular provides that service for free for the first year. But what it does is it makes it easy for you because they have it all through one streamlined process where they have their registered agent. You don't have to worry about getting their signature or anything like that. And then it's all handled for you in one dashboard. When you go to the state website, they just kind of ask you who you want to have on there. But the signature of the organizer, print the name of the organizer. And this one's really honestly one of the simplest ones out there. But what you can see at the bottom is there's a filing fee of $110. If you're in office, if you do it online, it's $100. There's no way around those filing fees. You are going to pay that regardless of if this is, being done on the state website, online legal tools, or if you're going through a business attorney. Just wanted to make you aware of that as well. But once you get this set up, you assign your registered agent, you file your articles of organization, you pay that $100 or $110 fee. Next, what you have is you can create and sign an LLC operating agreement. What that is it's not required for setting up your LLC, but it's a good idea. It's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure situation. Now, let's say that you have these coffee shops and you do really well and you end up having 13 of them, but you had a business partner from day one and you never had an LLC operating agreement. Well, what happens if that business partner decides they want to exit the business someday? If you had that agreement, what would it be on there is the names and members, or the names of the members and organizers. They would have what their roles and responsibilities are, but things such as like How do you handle if somebody wants to exit the business? Now, instead, you're going to have to get attorneys involved. It's going to be a very costly process, and it's going to be very frustrating to do this. And again, it's because an ounce of prevention, the LLC operating agreement, is worth a pound of cure. All right. So when you go through the online legal tools, a lot of them will have boilerplate templates you can use. The state website's not going to help you with this. A business attorney can dial one in for you, but again, a business attorney, you're looking at a couple $1,000s. Now, after LLC formation, you also want to consider setting up an EIN. There's a link in here. This is the IRS website. The EIN is an employer identification number. This is like a social security number for your business. Now, it's free to set up through this process right here, but you can also have the online LLC services do this for you as well. But what you should know is this is something that if you're going to have staff on payroll, you have to have an EIN. Also, if you're applying for like business insurance or like office space or a business loan, it looks a lot more professional to be able to put your EIN on that form instead of your social security number. And then sometimes EIN and TIN are used interchangeably as well. Just know that if you see TIN, EIN, it's typically the same thing on the form that you'll be filling out. Let's say you get your EIN. Last step here, a lot of people look over this one, but it's obtaining the necessary business licenses and permits for your LLC. There's a helpful SBA resource on here that you might want to check out, but why don't we use the example of opening up a brewery? Now, when you open up a brewery, you are going to be brewing beer, you're going to be distributing beer, and you're going to be serving beer potentially. Those three things can all require different licenses and permits, and they can be required on the federal level, the state level, and the local level. Now, when it comes to the local level, what I would recommend is just calling up your town or city clerk and just saying, hey, I'm starting XYZ business. I'm just curious about what licenses and permits that I need to get set up before I get going. And then do you have any information on the county level? And they can probably direct you on the county level. The state level, you can just do a Google search, like Nebraska business licenses. It'll take you to the state website and you can handle it there. On the federal level, you can do the same thing. But what I would recommend here too is there is the option that the LLC services, the ones online, these tools that are available to you, they actually have packages where they'll do this research for you. So if you don't feel confident in that, you can have the services to handle that for you as well. What we have down here is what we're going to be talking about in the next video in this series. We're going to be deep diving on the 3 different paths you can go through. So when we talk about those online tools, those LLC services, what I found is that in certain cases, people overpay by nearly $1,500 when setting up their LLC. So what we have here is an embedded cost calculator on the page, and we're going to be going through that and showing you what it costs down to the dollar to own and manage your LLC for 5 years. We're going to be looking at these star ratings and comparing where these star ratings come from when you're looking at the services to give you better context. We're also going to be going over this concept of domestic versus foreign LLC. So if you're not familiar with that, you definitely want to watch the next video. And then we're also going to be going into questions worth asking when it comes to your LLC. This may help you decide which path you need to go based on these questions. And again, I'd highly suggest getting this checklist for yourself so you can explore the bonuses and the glossary of terms. So there'll be that link in the description below, and we're going to catch you in the next video.